Hi, this is Joanne C. Hillhouse, author from Antigua and Barbuda, and I'm delighted to be launching my Creative Space series on a video platform. And I'm delighted to have as my first guest, Sonalli Andrews, artist extraordinaire from Antigua and Barbuda. And Sonalli, so we're just going to jump right in. Tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got into the art of graphic design.
I was introduced to graphic design when I was awarded a scholarship before I graduated from secondary school. I had entered
That's
into
Clare Hall Secondary School, correct?
Hillhouse Secondary School. Yeah, I had entered into an art competition in third form, and by the time I got to fifth form, my scholastic journey was already kind of pre-planned ahead of me. So I knew that I was going to have it right afterwards. And then,
Stick a pin, Sonali, because there's something you said that I think it's important to underscore. You entered an art competition early in your secondary school career, and
right,
that kind of opened a window in your mind to what you could do. As
yep,
someone who I run the Wadadli Youth Pen Prize, which has an annual challenge for writers and artists,
right,
and I think it's important that we find ways to sort of stimulate that part of the young mind. For you,
right.
speaking from your personal experience, can you validate validate
Yeah, I can
my
validate
feeling
it.
on that? I mean, do I have a point?
Yes, you do have a point. I see it as a legal portal for persons to, achieve things that would help them throughout their journey in life. It just depends on what you want to do. It depends on the field you're from or the field you're headed into. I had an idea that I was going to be an artist. I just didn't know that I was going to be a graphic designer.
Mhm.
So I was just trying to follow the footsteps that were, so to speak, glowing in front of my eyes. And so I was walking in those glowing footsteps. So I kind of knew where my path was. I didn't exactly know precisely in my younger years that it would have been graphic design or it was called graphic design.
How did you figure it
But
out?
well, it came to me. I wasn't following it. It came to me because after I began studying, doing my associates at Abbott, the first course inside of the associate degree was actually Adobe Photoshop.
Mm.
And in doing that course, my eyes opened up and I realized that's how a lot of brands were created around the world. That's how a lot of photo manipulation that we see, the before and after image for products like face creams and that sort of thing. And it, opened up my eyes to me. It was like witchcraft. It was like magic.
Mm.
And that's when I started to get an insight that this is closer to what I want to do. But even in those early moments, it still wasn't what I want to do because it's these last few years that I'm recognizing that my passion and all the talent that really resides in me is more on the illustrative end. But graphic
Okay.
design
Okay.
overlaps.
So we'll get to the illustrative end because that's the lion's share of what I want to talk to you about. But just so
No problem.
people have a sense of how you commercialize this talent into something that's marketable, profitable, practical.
So I started my entrepreneurship journey at the age of 22, and
Oh yeah.
at that time, I wasn't even looking at age. I actually thought I was old and unaccomplished, but I was just pushing through life because I thought that I was kind of behind and, I wasn't in a 9 to 5 like everyone else at the time. So I had to find my own way. And
Mm.
so I'm a resourceful person and I went on the internet and researched, how to make money online, all that sort of stuff. But what my true inspiration came from a previous coworker from the same agency which I used to be working at, and he used a platform called 99 Designs, and essentially that site allows graphic designers from all over the world to compete to win the top prize for the client's favorite pick, and then they get rewarded in cash. That cash can be sent via Western Union, PayPal, Payoneer, or some other format I can't remember at the moment, but back then I was using Western Union to get my money to me in Antigua. So whenever the economy fluctuated, I was still making my money, but I thought I was doing bad, to be honest, because nobody was really aware of, the possibility of you reaching the rest of the globe, the globe from your
But the
bedroom.
fact that you're using Western Union suggests to me that very early on you already had international clients. Yes?
Yes, my first client was that became official and a realization to me that the local market is just a limitation on the possibilities of my reach. My first client was actually in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
I designed a fitness logo called Peak Fitness, and it won the competition. And I think at the time, and again, I wasn't even looking at the fact that it was a big deal in terms of how many persons entered that competition and where those other designers were from. And I'm from this tiny island called Antigua. There's about over 500 other designers. I'm talking top tier, A-list designers, professionals, and I was an outcome at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And I won, and these people were so satisfied and content with the level of excellence that came from me at the time. So that it was Australia, then it
So
started to.
a lesson there, if we can pause for a minute, would be, especially now in this, I think this year in particular has exposed people to the reality that the physical and geographic boundaries are,
Right.
they're not real, in the sense that we're communicating right now, we're having a meeting right now.
Right.
I freelance as well. I work with people overseas and domestically as well. So you can reach out beyond your world to the world and find
Right.
opportunities. You just have to expand your view.
You definitely have to, and you have a lot of people aren't exposed to that thing we call spatial awareness.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of exist within the box, a box called Antigua or a box called the Caribbean, and they're not thinking of expanding outside that realm and connecting, networking with persons outside there. And from my experience, when this domino effect happened, because it started in Australia, then it went to China, San Francisco, California, and the most recent competition I won before I, kind of lay off on the competing online trend was in India. And a few of those persons I'm still in connection with, and I have still assisted their brand up until last year.
Mm-hmm.
And these are real people that talk to me. I just never really put it out there in the public because I realized graphic design is not necessarily a field that my country or the Caribbean pays acute attention to.
I think you'll find the creative arts, as much as we say, it's sort of a buzzword to say creative industries. We're really not maximizing the potential of the creative industries, simply because, in my opinion, the powers that be don't really get it. Would you agree?
Right. We as a people, we don't see the value in it, so therefore we can't appreciate it and generally don't want to pay for it.
Yeah. That is a big thing. I saw an interview you did where you spoke about that, where you get the big tap up, I love your work, and then you submit your price, and they're like, oh, my cousin can do it for like 5 cents. I've gotten the response of, what, the minimum wage is this? Why are you charging me that? I've gotten that kind of response as well, so I can relate. So we won't get too much into that because this is creative space. We want to talk more about the creative end, not the business end. But if you had to sum up what you would like people to understand about that aspect of it, especially operating from Antigua, can you sum it up? The business of it.
In a nutshell, your years of experience combined with your talent and your worth as a professional designer is what defines whatever you want to charge the client. And I think the sensible or educated person would be able to deduce your reasoning behind why you charge a specific price.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I also wanted to, before we get more into the creative side of it, I also wanted to touch on one thing with you, because you're a young person, and
thank you.
Well, you're not 30 yet. So after
30, 2 days ago.
Oh, sorry, 2 days ago. So you're just 30. You don't even know what 30 feels like yet. So my question is, what would you say to other young people trying to find their path?
if I was to specify what path I'm on and what matters to me the most, I think it would be inspiring other people, because I wasn't born with a gold spoon in my mouth, and I had to discover a lot of things on my own. So I think I, at this point, would have a knack to educate people, because of learning from experience. I would say I have a reservoir of information that I could then pass on to young people, especially, and older folks as well.
You also do that. You do that formally, right? You're a teacher.
Yes, I am a professional instructor as well. I actually have a class ongoing at the moment that continues Tuesday to Friday. But I would say to young people who are on a journey to find their path or their passion, is to pay attention to what really stimulates you. And if it makes you excited, then find more of it.
Yeah,
And you can find, you now have to build your visual vocabulary and your word vocabulary as well, especially if you're a writer. Yeah. You're not going to be able to truly express what's inside here unless you evolve mentally, emotionally, all of that stuff.
If you love the thing and you really want to do it, you have to, whether it's formally or through self-education, you have to constantly try to improve and take in knowledge.
Right. So you gotta practice, but you gotta put yourself in the environment, align yourself with the people who like singing, and find the content that can educate you how to vocalize or how to hit certain octaves, and you practice and practice. And you do some concentrated studies in whatever form or format you're taking or practicing. You have to do concentrated studies. So if you're a singer and you know that to have some sort of control with certain notes, today you're going to practice la 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 la, and then tomorrow la 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 la, just for you to be able to consistently and fluidly hit certain notes. You have to practice. Yeah. And practice doesn't necessarily have to be with a group of people. Practice could be by yourself. But and that
flexing your muscles, keep working out the muscles.
Right. And that leads me to my fifth and final point. It would be discipline.
Well, having said all of that, I am also of the mind that discipline, improving, consistently networking, all that stuff, inspiration is also a part of it. And I'm going to use that to segue back to your illustrative work. First of all, congrats. You are the illustrator, or the illustrator of the first ever graphic novel out of Antigua and Barbuda.
Thank you.
Tell us about that.
That was a learning experience for me, because at the time I think I was also going through what we call imposter syndrome, where I didn't think I was good enough. But Tamika was so excited to work with me, and she just believed in me to the point that she said if nobody else is doing it, then she's not doing it. And she was waiting on me to start working on this thing for her. And I told her, I'm not sure I'm up there, but we can try. And she's like, I believe in you. So she sent me the script, and I perused it, and I had liked the story myself. And so I had the process entailed me having to do a bit of character design and connect myself with each character, including the protagonist and the antagonist. And there were a few, and I had to connect myself to the environments and props as well. So I had to look up different poses for the anatomy that would really communicate the gestures during a conversation or dialogue panel. And it was a lot of work, because I had to do a few drafts first, and then I'll have to get the drafts approved. And then from the approval, I would then do the extensive render or final render of that one, and then send them off page by page.
Tell me the difference creatively for you of working on a project like that compared to working on the characters that you did for the Team Antigua Island Girls. What was the difference creatively for you?
Less work because I had to draw less characters, but more work because they were rendered differently than the comic book. The comic book was done in black and white, but the Island Girls were done in a full color illustration.
Does it matter who they are, or do you project personalities onto them that are sort of more organic to the creative process? Or is it about you trying to sort of mirror them, the real people?
Yes, I try to be very organic and synchronize the person's physical appearance or physical attributes, including their personalities as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Worked on another graphic novel?
Yes, I did one for Samantha Samuel. It was a children's story.
Oh, I forgot about that one. Tell me about that. That's the
Yeah.
children's book, yeah.
Yeah, that one was completed just earlier this year in January, I believe it was launched, and it's also available on Amazon. It's called Journey to Discovery by Samantha Samuel. So that was I think was a 44-page children's storybook, and it was discussing Carl and his summer adventure, and it was targeting the homosexual demographic or sensitizing people towards homosexuality in terms of parenting. So sometimes there are situations where there's two moms and they have a child, and there's sometimes there's a situation where there's two dads as well. But then an innocent child growing up who is 5, 8, or 9 then sometimes encounter bullying.
What was your first children's book?
That was my first children's book. In fact, that one was a pain in the ass, I'm not gonna lie.
And those the best ones though? The ones that challenge you?
Yeah, and that was one of the projects that I had that also aided to my maturity as an illustrator as well, and especially working in color too, because I started off with the black and white, which was Tamika, and by the time I got to the coloring of my illustration skills, I realized that I grew upon the completion of, well, I was recognizing that I was growing as I did a page each time. So each page would end up looking better than the previous one, which, you know, the client really enjoyed that. I was impressed by that too myself. And by the time I completed the book and compared a few things side by side, I was like, you know, this person has grown.
Yeah. So tell me about the process of creating character. Speak to that process a little bit, because I think if we're talking earlier about favorite and least favorite superheroes. You mentioned that your favorite is Iron Man, and from the MCU and from the DCU, Flash.
Yeah.
I think my favorite from the MCU is Storm. Storm, obviously, as a Black woman, was like iconic for me when I discovered her. Obviously, we all love T'Challa. But the point is, all of these, people call them silly, but they're actually, we look at the X-Men comics, for instance, they're talking about stories about difference and prejudices, and almost like a mirror of the civil rights movement at the time that it came out.
Yeah, there are political movements, and these illustrations actually captured and send the message without being so heavy.
Yes, exactly. But Professor X was about finding a way to get along with their adversaries.
Yeah, the humility. Yeah.
And Magneto was about almost like almost a separatist in the sense of we are not going to assimilate. We are not going to try to Going back to the question of building character.
Right.
Magneto is not this idea of evil for evil's sake. He was actually, you have to look at how he became that way as well. And you think of in Black Panther, you think of the adversary, the antagonist in Black Panther, and how so many people related to his journey. You know, bear me among my ancestors who preferred to be free. And a lot of Black people were like, you know, I stand T'Challa, but you know what? Come on, guys, the point. You know, so the point is that the characters in comics can actually be really complex and interesting. And so characterization is a big part of writing them and drawing them. So I want you to speak a little bit of how you imbue sort of characterization into your drawing when you're creating characters.
Yeah, it's the same as on the professional scene, whether small or big, you know, Marvel, DC, Santa Monica, Blizzard and those big studios. The process generally starts with brainstorming, coming up with the different character tropes. So you then have to decide, okay, do I want this character to be quirky? Do I want them to be funny? Or do I want them to be stoic? Then there's also combining a mixture of both. You could combine a character who is temperamental, where one time they're psycho and the next time they're sane by night. And these things create interest and makes the character more memorable. So in taking note of the intangible stuff that I just mentioned to you, then you now have to flesh out and materialize the character so that you could see the character's expressions, emotions, gestures, and stance in certain environments and situations. How would this character react to an object being thrown at them? Would they use a large amount of energy and power to dodge or dash across the screen, or would they simply phase through the object? So then there's ability, showing off the character's abilities as well, how they handle certain environments that they're exposed to. And there's clothing design, color choice. So the colors you choose and the character also can communicate whether the character is evil or whether the character is good as well. Typically, black usually suggests that the character is bad, but in the case of Black Panther, because of the workaround, which we know that he's a protagonist because he's fighting for good, and that's how you would then associate that hero is fighting for good. So then in a situation like that, the color wouldn't imply that he's a bad character.
You can subvert the expectations, like colors symbolize certain things, but you can invert what the colors mean and create an actual another conversation around that thing.
Yeah, in his case, the predominant black and then purple accents are the dark colors because he's able to go from being visible to going completely stealth. And he's known for being a stealth character, so that's why that particular design is done that way.
But also symbolically, I mean, from a narrative standpoint, you're also talking about a character in a world that centers blackness, not blackness in response to the white gaze or blackness in response to its meeting with the Western world, but blackness as its own story that is,
right.
It centers itself, and there's power in that. And that, I think that's also how Black Panther is subverting what we expect these colors and what these, what we expect these things to mean.
Yeah, that's one of the distinct features that separates him from the other heroes as well.
Yeah. The reason why I pulled up the other image just now, even though you were talking about supers, because to me we're also having a broader conversation about characters and character design, is I remember you did that for the TEDx talk here in Antigua.
Yeah.
And you said at the time that it was one design that you had to do very quickly. Yeah. And also that you were trying to subvert this idea of what that character looks like or is about. You made a very sort of snarky comment, like, I don't know if you remember what you said, but it was something like, you know, basically the images we usually see, forget that, I'm not about that. And then you draw this scene. So I want you to tell me, in your mind, what's different here? Like from a character standpoint, what's different to what we normally see?
All right, let's pull it up and see.
Can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it now. The difference here is that the medium used is digital art versus traditional art. So I actually drew on my Wacom Cintiq companion at the time. So I actually have an example of what I was using here. I was using a stylus where I was drawing on the screen. And I used that to render the artwork. So there's the type of technology that was used, and then there's also the execution style. So it does look illustrated and hand rendered, but it has a very polished feel to it, and also a somewhat manga or Japanese style. It does. That was me sending a message globally.
We're looking to the future, not the past, kind of thing. Yeah. Although I tell you what I like about it is even though the style is very futuristic, The image itself actually shows a lot of respect for the past.
Yeah, it captures that. I think it captured that very well. And the reason why it was done that way is to send a message that even though we are Caribbean, you know, we are also capable of producing superior quality of work. And we find ourselves in this box where we just expect this local look, and I personally don't like it. I don't think that you should be pushing for local. I think you should be pushing for international. People respect a global level than they respect a local level. I find when you're trying to associate yourself with local, the majority of times the standard to which you're aiming at, it's not going to be recognized globally because it's only going to be recognized within that circle, within that country you're in. Only those people who know of that will respect it.
I think I would debate you a little bit on that, because I do believe in realizing that your work has global potential and drawing on different aesthetics, drawing on different influences.
Right.
But I also, from a writing standpoint, I consider the stories I tell to be particular stories. And yet my stories have traveled internationally, and I've had people who have, I have a book like The Boy from Willow Bend, and one of the last people to tell me how much she related to it and how it made her cry was someone from like the Ukraine. Like it was someone like in that part of the world. And it didn't come of me trying to tell a global story. It came of me trying to tell a particular story about a particular character and his experience. And I find that in the particular, you can find the universal. And that's just talking about the story itself. Stylistically, obviously, we can try different things and expand and so on. But I don't necessarily believe in watering down the story so much as telling the story to its fullness, to its particular. When I do writing workshops, for instance, I try to emphasize understanding the particular character. What does this person care about? What are they afraid of? What do they love? What do they want? And I see that in your illustrations, even though the style, your aesthetic is not limited to any particular sort of local sensibility. The stories, the characters that come through feel particular, feel specific.
Right. I think what I was trying to bring across that is that you can be authentic to your origin. You know, where you grew up, where you're rooted from. So you're rooted from Antigua, but you don't necessarily have to execute it in fashion,
limited way.
In a limited way.
Do you see yourself creating your own original comic, graphic novel, animated film, short film, whatever, with a character that comes from your imagination at some point?
Yeah, I do. I have intentions. Right now, I am still studying as we speak, so I am in the process of refining every aspect of my multifaceted abilities. So it's not just the graphic design, it's the illustrative skills, all of that, the drawing skills on traditional mediums as well.
So you do work in the traditional mediums?
Yeah, I do. I do sketch sometimes to mood board, to remember a thought. So like I might be on the road and a thought of a character or personality might come to me and I note it down or just sketch it down. So by the time I get home, I can remember what exactly I saw in my head or sketch of it. I do plan to create my own comic book someday, but in the interim, just to practice, I do funny stuff and share them around so people can have a good laugh. But when the time comes, I think it would be right, because I'm just in the phase of practicing right now. This whole year, this COVID year, has given me some time to really sit down and study and sort of perfect certain things where I was a bit not so confident with. Yeah.
So for instance, what do you mean? For example?
For instance, understanding how the light, understanding lighting. Currently, my light is coming from this direction and it's hitting this side of my face. Before I wasn't paying attention to those things, then I'm also thinking about the shadow. So the light has entered into my skin from this side, and on this side is very bright, and there's a thing called subsurface scattering where the light is bouncing around on your skin that's nearest to the light and it's reflecting back. So that's why we're seeing certain colors on our skin. For instance, my ears. If I turn my ears, you will see that the light is actually glowing through my ears in a kind of orange fashion. That's also an example of subsurface scattering. If I was to translate that to pencil and paper, then I know I would have to make the lines or the shading inside of my ear a little bit lighter than compared to my eye cavity, or the shadows under my neck, the shadows inside my shirt. So I am becoming more thorough and more thoughtful in terms of putting down each stroke, if that makes sense.
So if anyone listening to this, did you get that little bit of tutorial that we just got? That's my segue. That's my segue to the fact that you do a camp for youngsters. Tell us about that. That's a cool idea.
Yeah, well, I actually didn't run the camp this year because of the whole COVID situation, but normally I would have had a summer camp for children between the ages of 10 to 16 where I teach traditional art. But I don't do it in a sense where you're doing the boring life drawings of a vase on a table, and then you have to draw the vase or draw a boring book standing. I really don't represent that. I try to have a lot of fun, and I try to put myself in the mind of a child. You know, am I enjoying this class? Am I having fun? But that particular course I was offering was for that age range, yes, and I was teaching illustrations. I was teaching the basics of anatomy, drawing hands, lighting, storytelling, creating character tropes, expressions, all of that stuff. I even went as far as doing vehicle design. So they would use basic shapes and combinations. For instance, the basic shapes would be the circle, square, and a triangle, and then the secondary shapes would be a cone. That is because a cone is a mixture of a triangle and then a circle at the bottom, and then we did 3D shapes. So a square then becomes a cube when you rotate it, has multiple sides. If you rotate it, it can also become like a hexagon. So all of that interesting stuff I tried to put in a fun way in that particular course for those kids.
I want to actually do this because the whole idea of this program is creative space, and it's about sort of inspiring each other. So I want to share, it's a flash fiction, so it's not very long, what this image inspired me to write. You
well,
okay with that?
That's fine, but I'll just drop a discreet or succinct comment about that. When I did that, I was pushing my abilities to draw hyper-realistic drawings. It's not I was trying to push my hyper-realistic ability digitally. And I was very happy with the result. It does represent something. At the time, it was me sending a message to the type of person I am. You know, if I'm committed to somebody, I'm committed to them. So the wolf aspect of it was they're two lovers, and
it's called warrior love.
The warrior's love. So
yeah.
it is a projection of who I am, because I really love canines, and specifically the wolf, because of the impact they have on our ecosystem. Not a lot of people know that wolves actually affect the flow of rivers in the what do you call it, the forest and stuff like that. They also act like bees because they carry pollens when they travel really far, and they're also very loyal to their team as well. And it was just a combination of things that were about the wolf that I find the characteristics match up to me as a human being as well. So we're love, work, and you know how I look at life. Essentially, it was just a representation of all of that put together.
I think our viewers, if I'm doing this right and they can see it, will agree that it's also just a very beautiful image. That's one. I mean, you had multiple images online, and this is one that I pulled. And one of the things I try to do, even if I can't make progress on like major writing projects, is I try to write a little bit every day. What you said about flexing your muscles, trying to get the practice in every day. And so sometimes you use different prompts. And this was my writing prompt yesterday. And since this is a creative space, I'm going to share it. And again, there's no pressure on you to respond to it at all. But I'm actually very nervously putting because you don't normally share this stuff, but I want to because it inspired me. So this is called, it's a flash fiction, so it's very short. It's called A Loup-Garou Love Tale. Werewolves, loup-garou as they're called in the Caribbean, mate for life. Their habitat giving over to development, quote unquote, over the years, forcing them to assimilate into the human population. It has gotten harder and harder for the remaining wolves to find their mate. Their compatibility with humans means they've almost, for convenience's sake, bred themselves into extinction. And then there is Lal, the lonely wolf of Antigua. His mother who raised him was pure human, and his wolf instincts were muted as a result. His mother told him tales of his father, more wolf than human, dying through lack of a pack. Not every loup can handle the loneliness, she said. She worked overtime to pull her wolf boy out of his moods. They took him sometimes, but all in all, he was a well-loved and well-adjusted boy. Only the very closest and his doctor knowing of his lineage. The first time Lal shifted, it was involuntary. He had never learned how, but Mother Moon would not be denied. He was 16 when it happened, sexually an adult in Antigua, though he still couldn't vote. The moon sang to him, and his blood felt like it had been set on fire. And so he ran, and he howled, and he frolicked, feeling more alive than he ever had. He was on a beach, far from home, having finally exhausted himself, when he heard an answering howl. Her fur was pale in the full moonlight. What human there was in his brain in current state judged her to be a tourist from one of the many hotels up the beach, playing in paradise with her family. He wondered if her parents were wolf too, or if she was the product of some recessive gene. He looked in her eyes as she drew close and imprinted on her without meaning to. He didn't know enough wolf lore to even know what imprinting was, and though they sniffed around each other and rubbed cheeks and noses curiously, they didn't get to know each other then, as the security came down the beach to shoo the stray dogs which the hotel manager didn't like pestering the guests. The pale she-wolf went this way, Lal went that, and though he would return to the beach on another night, even wander the hotel lobby on occasion before being shooed again, though in human form, he would not see her there again. In time, even her scent grew faint. And that's how a fairly rambunctious youth became a silent, lovelorn young man. He still had his mother's love, and it was plenty. But a wolf having imprinted on its mate will not be satisfied until they are bonded. Still, Lal functioned. He finished school, he got a job, he sketched his wolf relentlessly, her brown eyes, her pale fur. She was warmth he needed to cuddle up in. In his dream, she came to him, and he wished he could see where she was so he could go to her, but he had only a faint sensing of sub-zero chill and snowfall to guide him. Even if he pulled out a map and hit every winter, it would still take a lifetime to find her, if at all. Go, his mother said finally, willing to let him go, rather than lose him to the loneliness of yearning for something he might never find. And that's how Lal, the lonely wolf of Antigua, found himself hitchhiking around the world, hoping to one day meet his mate again. So that's my little, creative endeavor in response to, wait, let me pull it up, in response to A Warrior's Love. I had no idea of your backstory, so I was just writing off of the image, and something in his eyes spoke to sort of yearning to me, and that's what I responded to. And that's just a very rough draft of, just a writing exercise in response to that. And I would actually like to use that as a jumping off point as we wrap, to invite whoever's watching this to take the creative challenge of creating something in response to this image. Creative Space is this is a video production, but it's also a print column in the Daily Observer newspaper, and it's also on my blog, johadley.wordpress.com. You can, if you want to email me the image, you can send it to johadley@gmail.com, and maybe I'll share it with the Creative Space audience. But whether you share it or not, the whole idea is to challenge you to create. That's what we're all about here. That's what Sonalli is about. That's what I am about. And so I just want to give you that little challenge that I took to write in response to this image. We call it a visual prompt. Sonalli, as we wrap, do you have any final thoughts? Anything that I didn't touch on? Anything that forgive me if I did this over talk to you on, because I get excited when we're talking about creative things. Anything that you want to share?
Well, I'll just drop a small comment on your story or the draft of the story. I think that's something that could be done as a short love story, novel, graphic novel.
That's very kind of you to say.
Yeah, I think it's something that, adults would go, towards the romance. Very relatable.
For the niche wolf romance audience.
Yeah, and I like that little bit of the wolf getting the excitement and the rush from the exposure to the moon. So that was a nice insert to really show the originality of werewolves. In terms of things I would like to touch on, I would just like to remind the viewing public or listening public, if you're just using your headphones and not watching, that I have an ongoing graphic design logo bootcamp where I'm teaching companies and persons alike to design logos to sell so that they're able to, make a secondary income. Because COVID has impacted the world in such a way that a lot of businesses got crippled, but at the same time, a lot of new businesses are emerging. So the demand for graphic design, specifically the logo item, is being asked for a lot, and I personally can't do all the logos in the world, even though I enjoy it. But because I'm also an instructor, I have the knowledge to impart that so more persons could have an opportunity to gain from that pool of money that's available online and offline. So in the class, I actually teach persons that you're not to limit themselves to Antigua. So the fact that we have to exercise social distancing, of course, the class has limited number of space, so we could space them out. But you are taught that you could make the money from behind your computer at home or your laptop or whatever device you choose to use.
And I'll drop your social media stuff so they know how to contact you.
Okay, you can contact me at Redminko Graphics on Facebook, and it's the same handle for my Instagram as well. If you
That's
want
REDNIKO, yes?
REDNINKO, so at Redminko. And if you want to WhatsApp me, it's 786-6002. I think the area code is 1268. The cost for this class at this present moment is only 500 EC. The requirements to enter into the class is that you have the software installed for that particular course and you have a laptop that can run the software. If for some reason that you can't source the software, I or my team would be able to assist you in getting the software at a very marginal price.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to thank you. I've enjoyed. I don't often get to talk comic books with people in Antigua, so it's actually cool that we were able to work that into the interview. That's not self-indulgent at all.
Right.
So just thanks for sharing some of your wisdom with us. If anyone was listening, they actually got some real technical tips, they got some professional tips, and they got some creative tips, and they can't ask for more than that. Thank you so much, Sonalli, and continue to inspire us.
Thank you. I appreciate you inviting me to take part in your Zoom chat as well. And I am up for you having another discussion on other topics as well. You probably delve into comic books more heavily if you want and have a little bit of fun.
Cool. Thanks for stopping by, and bye.